Hello, my friends. I have a fun show for you today. I got to sit down with Darryl Gratrix from MPC Molded Precision Components. And Darryl is, I'd say, one of the most passionate guys that is doing just so much work for skilled trades advocacy, being on different boards. He's on 2 different boards. He's on advisory committees. He started a project called Next Gen Skilled Trades. And he has been with Molded Precision Products for, I think, close to 12 years now, including running their tool division where they build all their molds, do all the repair work. I think team of about 15 guys doing really complex work. And they put in ProShop there about a year ago. And it's been helping smooth out that operations considerably. But we dig into both the ProShop side, but really focus a lot on the advocacy work that he's doing to help bring these skilled trades folks into the industry. So without further ado, let's go chat with Darryl. Darryl, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me on, Paul.
Yeah, we have, I'd say we've been LinkedIn friends for quite a while now. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing with talking about skilled trades. And of course, you guys put ProShop there in your shop. For those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background and a bit about the company.
Yeah, I'm a licensed tool and die maker. Been in the trade for, because I'm getting old, maybe about 28 years now. Spent the first 15 years of my career in the stamping industry, and then the last 12 years in injection molding. About 6 months ago, I moved into the role of production manager here at MPC. For 5 years before that, I was the tool room manager. And before that, the first 20 years, mostly running CNC equipment, mills, wires. Ended up on the Sync EDM the last couple of years of my career.
Tell us a little bit about MPC. Where are you guys located exactly?
Yeah, we're about an hour north of Toronto, Ontario.
Okay.
We've got approximately 75 employees, and we do plastic injection molding, mostly automotive. We have approximately 15 guys in our tool room, build all our own tools and run them here. I think we're getting close to around 48 injection molding machines.
It's a good operation.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the workforce development side with the skilled trades, next gen skilled trades thing.
Yeah. So, as we get on in our careers, you start to get that, feeling that you should be training the next generation of machinists and tool makers. And then the last couple of years, that's kind of transitioned into, well, not only do I need to do that, but I need to be helping recruit the next generation of machinists and tool makers.
You can't bring them in, you can't train them.
No.
So.
And we all know, what, maybe 5% of the populations know what a machinist or a tool maker does for a living. So we have a big, long road ahead of us to try and change that narrative. So it's a big challenge, but, I think there's enough of us kind of on the same road that we can start having a big impact.
Yeah, for sure. And so what are you actually doing with that entity?
So the last 2 to 3 years ago, I think I got involved with a local organization called Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program. So it's throughout Ontario, but I'm associated with our local school board, and I'm on the advisory committee for machining, tool and die mold making. So we meet a couple times a year, and what OEAP is in grade 12, you do 6-month co-op at high school, and during that time, you can sign up as an apprentice. And for our 3 trades, they have what's called accelerated OEAP. So during May and June, the last 2 months of high school, the students actually go to a local community college and finish their level 1 apprenticeship schooling.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it works in the States, but in Ontario, you go to 3 levels of schooling that are 8 or 9 weeks each, plus your 8,000 hours for your apprenticeship. So these kids can graduate high school already having completed level 1 schooling and having about 6 months of hours done on their apprenticeship. Probably the main thing that just kickstarted me in getting into this more and more. We're also doing, all kinds of open houses where we can, trades nights. We're hosting tours with local high school guidance counselors, teachers, And yeah, it only takes that one person to have a domino effect. Which I found out a couple months ago. A year ago, we did our first tour with guidance counselors, and it went over really well. We have 2 facilities. Our newer one, it's only 3 or 4 years old, so it's very new, modern, and people are always shocked when they come in here because they have that vision of a manufacturing facility
that's dirty
and dangerous, the 3Ds. And so it went well, but then I didn't hear much more after. So I thought, well, I don't know. Maybe it worked. Maybe not. Maybe it was a waste of my time. Who knows, right? But then I went to an open house at a high school at the end of March, and they had maybe 20 vendors and probably close to 300 students showed up. So it was a great night. And I was talking to the teacher that organized it. And I said, "You look familiar. Have we met before?" And she was like, "Yeah, I was there I came through MPC for a tour last year." She said, that was actually my motivation for setting this event up so that we could show the kids. So yeah, that was rewarding, gave me a bit of a spark to keep going and not to get discouraged because, right, it only takes one person.
Sure. Yeah. Talk about that domino effect.
Yeah.
We had an episode of Making Chips recently that's not going to come out for a while in our MBA series. And the gentleman that we had on was talking with guidance counselors and teachers and like those folks, and of course you want to talk to parents but the guidance counselors that are steering kids down certain directions, a lot of times they just don't even know what the options are in picturing, right? And so to go directly to them so they have an idea of what's possible and what kind of income can be made and how great a career it can be. Because there's a lot of kids, as you know, and I was one of them, not the best student, not great at some of the academics, but really good at hands-on, like building and doing things, keeping more active. And manufacturing just turned out to be perfect for me. But
and there's also, the probably 80% of kids in high school don't know what they want to do, if not higher. And I fell into that bucket where, I wasn't what you would call mechanically inclined in high school. I'd help my dad with home reno projects, help my uncles on the farms, but I wasn't out fixing cars or working on engines. I knew I wanted to go to university, more for the social aspect, that the education probably. So I did. I went and got a 3-year BA in geography.
Okay.
But by my 3rd year, I figured, well, I'm going to have to do something so I could go get a job. And so then I took a 2-year college course. So part of the thing that I'm working on as well is, I'd like to make all high school kids aware of all the different skilled trades, but specifically ours, because so many of them don't know what we do.
Yeah.
And we don't want, I think everyone should at least know what our trades are. So we're not just kind of forcing it on one group of kids in high school, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's no surprise that kids don't understand and know as much about manufacturing. We had, again, on Making Chips, we had a gentleman named Mike Nager who has written some children's books about manufacturing. But his comment, which makes so much sense, is that when kids are driving in the backseat, or riding in the backseat of their parents' car, driving down the highway or the road or whatever, you can see things like a construction site and the cool big equipment, the cranes and the machines. When you go by a machine shop or a manufacturing company, all you see is a building. There's nothing there's nothing to see inside. So it's just kind of hidden from sight. But it's obviously you and I know, and hopefully the listeners know, that it's ubiquitous. And
you're 100% right. Probably 80% of kids know what a carpenter does, an electrician, a plumber, like you say, a crane operator, any of those things that are visible.
Yeah. Machines. All right. Well, keep fighting that good fight. I appreciate that. So coming back to MPC, how many guys in the tool room, and give us an idea of how many molds you'd make a year or work orders you'd process or things like that.
Yeah, we're usually hovering around 15 guys in the tool room.
Okay.
And it's usually close to a 50-50 split. Half of them are in the CNC shop, and then the other half are mold makers. So they're either working on production molds, doing preventive maintenance, repairs, or doing any manual machining for the new tools, repairs, and then, final assembly of new tools. On average, we're usually somewhere between 10 to 20 new tools a year.
Okay.
In terms of work orders, it just depends on the week, but, I'd say on the low end, it's usually about 10 up to, say, 20 work orders a week. And those include, that's everything from any kind of repair to a production tool to engineering changes, new tools.
Got it.
Just over a year ago, we started bringing in some outside work to keep the CNC machines busy. So we do have some automation equipment. So we do have, for a small shop, we do have a lot of capacity.
So for those, including myself, I have some inkling what the toolmaker side of the shop would do. Maybe just share a little bit more about what exactly a toolmaker does.
Yes, so mold maker. So the mold maker. The in my mind, probably one of the hardest trades to find out there. Because there are a few, such as myself. I'm actually a licensed tool and die maker. There's 3 or 4 of us that have switched over from tool and die to mold maker. But yeah, mold maker. So in terms of a new tool, they're the ones assembling it. Doing all the fitting. There's a hot runner to assemble in some tools, that's where basically where the plastic goes through in a melted state. And then this, most of our tools are multi-cavity. So if you had an 8-cavity tool, there's 8 drops coming out of the manifold. So when you're setting that up, like everything else in the tool, it's pretty much has to be perfect.
So they're taking the machined mold that the machine shop made and doing fine tuning, doing little rework, assembling it, making sure it's just all perfect.
Ideally there's never any rework, right? But
sure,
when you're talking about a core and cavity coming together, sometimes you've got slides. There can be lifters. We would like to say everything's perfect and it's just going to work, but there's usually always a little bit of fitting. And yeah, it's funny coming from tool and die. The one big difference between mold making is, the tolerance on your parts and the actual plastic parts just depends on the part, but you may be a couple thou. So on your steel, it might be plus or minus half a thou, but what they call the seal off, which is the area around your plastic part, that has to be plus or minus 2/10, or else you get flash, which is that thin layer plastic that you see around plastic components.
Yep.
So yeah, that seal off is the most important part of the mold. If you're not within that tolerance, then you're going to get flash. Or if you've got too much material, it's going to hold the tool open and you get flash in other parts. So yeah, it takes a real skill to fit a mold properly. And then the other side of it are production repairs. Some of our molds are 10, 15 years old and have millions of shots on them. So things start to wear out. So there's troubleshooting at the press for various different reasons. So that's part of the mold maker role as well.
Okay, so go over to the production side, watch the parts coming out, see what's going on.
Yeah, someone will come to them from production, say, well, I've got this part that's got flash, or maybe it's a short, which is missing material, or, maybe this, for whatever reason, this mold won't close up. In production, there's never a shortage of work.
Sure. So the tools that are being used to do this fitting, is it like stoning or using like surface grinders or tiny little files, like all the above?
Can be surface. If it's a flat surface, you can be surface grinding. But when you're talking 3D shapes, then on a slide, then sometimes you get into a bit of hand fitting. We do have a shop CMM. So as the parts come off the machine, we're CMMing them to make sure that we're close. That's the other nice thing about the automation unit. We have a 3R work partner between our high-speed mill and our sync EDM, and so everything is palletized. So we can take the pallet off, put it on the CMM, which has the same base, and then go right back to the machine. And you don't have to worry about picking everything up again and more risk of error. But yeah, we do CMM everything to make sure it's close before we send it down for assembly. So yeah, when we're talking, a bit of polishing or stoning, we really try and limit that, especially when you get into multi-cavity tools. The processing end of injection molding is very important, and your steel has to be within that tight tolerance on all 8 cavities, or else you're going to have a nightmare trying to process the tool. So you don't want to get into too much handwork, or you're going to get that variation from cavity to cavity.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine the complexity magnifies the more cavities you have, and the more precise you got to keep that. That's fascinating. So on the machining side of that, obviously you're CNC machining out with cutting tools. How many of your molds do just that, where you're doing like hard milling and just finishing it right that way? And how many of them go to EDM for, finishing out the actual surface and such?
Yeah, we do a lot of hard milling. And again, it just depends on the shape. We do a lot. Our molds are mostly smaller molds, like average size is probably, say, 12 inches cubed, maybe a little bit bigger. And then your inserts are even smaller.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, we do a lot of hard milling. But there's those sharp corners, deep ribs where you just can't get in with end mills. There are sometimes it's just a surface finish requirement where the customer wants the finish you get off the EDM. Yeah.
And do you guys make your own electrodes?
Yep. The work partner holds 90 electrodes and 9 work pallets. So we can pound, and we use copper tellurium for our electrodes. So we can
not carbon.
No.
Okay.
So we can pound through a lot of electrodes with that work partner. Yeah.
Very cool. So tell me what was transpiring in the shop when you guys were looking for some different software.
Yeah.
What challenges were you having?
Yep. So we bought our first tool room ERP, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
And we were, at that time, we wanted something that was specific for a tool room. So I wasn't involved in the selection of that software, but one of our owners, Tom, he kind of stumbled onto it through an acquaintance who was doing a bit of wire work for us. And so that was how we found it. The price was right. And before that system, we were still using Microsoft Project for scheduling.
Sure. Yep. We remember using that too at our shop.
Yeah.
In the early years.
So the CRP we had was a step up from that. So many times especially when we're trying to fit in production repairs into the schedule in between components for new molds, our schedule is so fluid.
Yeah.
You need to be able to swap that around quickly.
Changes by the hour. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, we had kind of used that system, got the most out of it, and it was time to look for something new. So we did a bunch of research on 2 or 3 different systems, and came to the decision that ProShop was the best for us. One of the big factors was we wanted to improve our internal QMS system.
Right, sure.
So that was a big one. If we ever want to get into different outside quality systems, trying to in the States, is it 9100?
There's AS9100 is aerospace, AS9100. Yeah.
If we wanted to get into that, we wanted to have a system that was ready to go. So we knew ProShop was good for that. It was great for the flexibility of rearranging our schedules on the fly. That was another big reason. And then we also, for the last 4 years, we've been keeping track of an internal income statement for the tool room. Even though we're still part of the bigger company, MPC, but we started keeping our own financials just so we could see exactly how the tool room was doing. And we could do that with ProShop. All our POs, all our purchasing, all that goes through ProShop. So it's all all tied together, all our invoicing.
So do you invoice the main business?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no money exchange hands, but it's always good. Yeah, it's always good for everyone to see just what, especially for production, right? Something happens and this tool gets damaged. Well, people don't realize, that was like a $2,000 bill to fix that tool. And then it also gives us a good record on our tooling costs. So we've got this tool's been running for 15 years and we've got whatever, $10,000, $15,000 in work order invoices for that tool. Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly, that'll help the main part of the business keep their job costing accurate to know what it takes to maintain what it takes to maintain a tool.
Yeah, it's great information. And we can look, if we see one that's high, then we can look at the design of that tool and say, well, so you're like you say for new work, right? We've got customer wants us to quote this new tool that looks something like a tool we built 10 years ago. Let's look at the maintenance costs and what can we do differently on this new tool so it's not so expensive to maintain it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Was your old system, was it paper-based with its work orders?
No, it was still on the computer, but the interface was it's the correct term, antiquated. Does that make sense? So when we got ProShop, the guys were very excited to have a modern software to work with. Yeah.
So maybe describe, you're talking about scheduling being so dynamic, and I can certainly imagine when you're supporting, a big production operation, especially. Can you elaborate on what are some of the differences in why scheduling became easier with ProShop and it wasn't before? So just simply the interface or some of the features, or
definitely the interface, and just with the scheduling you can basically like drag stuff around, right? We couldn't do that before. It would be you'd have to go in and change dates on multiple parts and then do a reschedule. Whereas ProShop, you drag something around, takes 5 seconds, and you've got a new schedule, right?
Got it. How often are you deviating from a schedule because you have a hot, urgent thing that's coming in? Is that a daily basis? Is that multiple times a day, in the tool room? Yeah,
depends on the day. I wouldn't say it's daily, but definitely weekly. And then, it's always, how Friday afternoon goes. There's always, especially in production, it seems Friday, like 2:00, all of a sudden there's like 3 presses down and different issues.
They want to run all weekend and make sure they get them back up and going.
Yeah. So it just depends on the day, but sometimes it could be 2 or 3 times. And with our molds, depending on the mold, sometimes you could have, say on the low end, 30 or 40 different components to manufacture. And then the more complicated ones could be up to 100 components. So when we're busy and you've got, say 4 or 5 molds on the go, you've got hundreds of components for the new molds. And then there's usually approximately 30, 40, 50 work orders open for different repairs or engineering changes. And some of those have multiple components. So there's hundreds of components in the schedule at one time. So being able to move those around quickly, it's very important.
Yeah. Do you have several machines that are equally capable? So you have to decide last minute which machine to actually run it on, or do they kind of have unique sizes and capabilities?
Yeah, they are all a little bit unique. We've got 1 wire EDM, 1 sinker, and then we do have 3 mills, but they're all a little bit different. We have a high speed mill. It's a smaller machine. The table's about 500 millimeters. So it's about 16 inches long.
Yep.
Or maybe 20, approximately.
Yep.
Trying to do my conversions on the fly.
I know when you were talking about tolerances on the molds, you were talking in inches.
In inches, yeah.
And now machine travels in millimeters.
Yeah. But yeah, that machine, it's got a spindle, goes up to 42,000. So that's where we machine all our electrodes.
Got it, of course. Yep.
Yeah, they are smaller, intricate pieces. Like, it's not unusual to be using a 2 mil ball now for finishing, and we have gone down to small as I think an 8 thou end mill.
8 thou. Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And then we've got another machine that is approximately 40 by 20, but it's got a 5-position pallet changer on the back. The spindle on that one is 20,000. So that mill is where we'll do a lot of our plate work and some of our insert work, roughing and hard finishing. On the other smaller mill, we'll do some of our hard milling there as well. Yeah. And then we've got our old workhorse. It's a Dolly with a 20 by 40 table, but it's probably 30 years old. So we still use it for roughing.
Right.
It's not the sweetest sounding machine, but it still does the job. It makes chips and long paid for. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds dynamic. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
So besides scheduling getting easier, and I guess let's talk about, because I've talked to shops where they still have a good on-time delivery rating. It just takes a whole bunch of effort to get there, right?
Yeah.
And after they put ProShop in, whether they improve, a little bit or not, but it takes so much less stress and effort to actually just keep it all going. Did you guys see actual improvements in the ability to finish your jobs on time? Or was it about the same? It just took less effort and brute force than it did before?
Yeah, I'd say it was about the same, but yeah, it just took a lot less effort. And you could, you could see ahead of time where you were at risk of being late. So it was a lot easier to start shifting stuff around and then get all those dates to come back into being on time. Looks like we're going to have to put in a couple Saturdays or something to make up that time and get us back on track.
Yep. Yeah, and the ability to just book a weekend shift or a Saturday shift quite easily and see how that impacts that job and the following jobs.
Yeah, that was something else that was easy to change, right? If we say the sync EDM, we had it scheduled for 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, 60 hours a week. If we, you could bump that up to 16 or 18 hours a day and then see how that affects the schedule. And maybe, if we put more focus on that uptime during the week, then that's going to help us as well.
Yeah, I'm curious to ask how much unattended time you get on your machines.
Yeah, quite a bit. We only run one shift. There's no afternoon shift. So, yeah, we're the sync EDM. I used to know these numbers better, but I would say anywhere from 3,000 to 3,500 spindle hours a week on it in the high speed mill. Those are our busiest machines by far. Yeah.
Sorry, can you say those numbers again? How many spindle hours a week?
Approximately 3,000 to 3,500. So that'd be 60 to 70 hours a week of spindle time.
Oh, per year. Okay, got it. Yeah, that's a good amount.
Yeah, we are, how do I say this properly? All our molds are pretty much one-off, right? It's not like a production machine where you're running the same part all year and you can maximize those hours. Yeah.
It makes it that much more impressive to get that many hours. Yeah.
Yeah, like an 8-cavity mold is big for us. So you're like, if you get 8 of one piece, that's a big run for us. Everything else it's a lot of one-offs.
Yeah. And that machine that has all the pallets for doing your electrodes, I imagine you get quite a bit of unattended time running those.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, and this is a little bit of education for me and everyone listening, but how many electrodes typically do you need to finish out a cavity? You do it in one? Do you need one to kind of rough and one to finish? Or
yeah, you need always have a rougher and a finisher.
Okay.
And then, like so many of our parts are different. If you have an 8-cavity tool, they're usually smaller inserts. if you're doing 8 parts, you probably have 2 roughers and 2 finishers. And then we like to break the electrodes down into smaller electrodes so they're easier to machine instead of doing like one big complicated electrode that's going to take a while to machine. We break them down into a bunch of smaller. But yeah, it can be trying to our most complicated mold, which is a single cavity mold, but within the say just the core side of the mold, if you add up all the different shapes, roughers and finishers, I think there's over 100 electrodes to go through there. Yeah.
What is the end product in that?
It's a very important part, Paul. That is a housing that goes in your car seat for vehicles that have a massaging seat.
Super critical. Absolutely.
Super critical, yeah.
Wow. 100 electrodes. That is amazing. So I could see why the complexity of scheduling and just everything just multiplies so much. Wow. That's really something else. I guess coming back to ProShop again. So are you using our tooling module? Are you cataloging your actual cutting tools yet in that?
That's an excellent question, Paul. And like I say, I've been in production now for 6 months. So I am a bit out of touch. So yeah, it's probably safer to say I'm not sure on that one.
Okay. Yeah, it's not often a module that people jump right in with both feet when they first start doing training. Some customers do. Some, they're like, that's one of the main reasons they want to get it, because they want to really get control of their tool crib, because that's sort of, they feel like, I think rightly so, it's kind of the heartbeat of the shop. Like if they don't know what tools they have and how much they're using for jobs, things just chaos ensues quickly after that. But yeah, all good. So can you describe any other things that just kind of smoothed out a bit, after you put in ProShop and, got rid of the more, I'll call it, antiquated system?
Yes, I just thought one huge factor that I totally overlooked is the inputting of the jobs, especially, when a mold's got 100, could be 40, 50, 100 different machine components. It also probably has that many or twice as many purchase components. So in our old system, we were having to load all this manually, like typing it in.
Oh, wow.
So now, now it's been a while, but it's all coming back to me now, Paul. Yes, this was a huge, huge factor. And now it's, just uploading the bill of materials into ProShop. It's a huge time saving. As far as probably, depending on the size of the job, you're looking at saving us half a day, even 2 days for a big job. Yeah.
And so was that someone's full-time job just doing that? And now is that part-time or just?
Yeah, we have a position called tooling engineer, and that was their job. Yeah. So that was, and again, it depends on how busy we are, but they were also, along with new tools, entering in all the work orders.
No one likes that data entry process.
No.
especially a trained engineer.
Yeah.
So if we can save that manual time, it's always a good thing.
Yeah, the first couple of years with the old system, I was doing that for a while too, and it was. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty painful.
You can appreciate the improvement. Yeah. That's awesome. Super cool. Well, what else haven't I asked that you'd like to share about the ProShop journey, about the company, about your all your great work and the next gen training?
I think the big one is, we're seeing more and more of us are realizing that we need to get out there and share our stories about being a machinist, a tool maker. That would be, if there's anyone listening out there and they're not doing that yet, I would strongly encourage you to, get in touch with local high schools, colleges, see if you can get them in, get kids or teachers to come for a tour to show them what modern manufacturing looks like.
You bet.
Yeah, that's another thing that we've been doing at MPC is we've always been involved with our local college, which is 5 minutes away, but we're starting to work with a couple other colleges in Ontario. One that recently purchased an injection molding machine, and they're trying to put together some courses on scientific molding. So they don't have the internal expertise. So we're using our experts to help them make the curriculum for that so that, we can help train the next generation of not just mold makers, but setup and process techs, which we need in the molding industry. Recently, I've joined the Canadian Association of Mold Makers on their executive board. So to try and help promote mold making as well. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, lots of networking going on. About a month ago, joined the Society of Plastic Engineers Mold Technologies Division, which focuses a lot on education as well. So yeah, I think that would be, the main take. If anyone comes away with this with anything, it's that those of us in the industry need to get out there and help promote it. We know we can't if we wait on government, it's never going to happen. We need to get out there and be part of it. Those of us in the skilled trades, and then everyone in industry, we need companies' support as well for all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, having done it a few times myself, I can say for those listening, getting a little sample kit of parts or samples or things and going to a high school and talking to students, it's actually really fun. And get the afternoon off from work and just go see that young energy and curiosity.
Yeah.
It's really worthwhile.
You only need to have an effect on one person, and you never know what that domino effect is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, super cool. So, Darryl, if people want to get a hold of you, talk a little more, how would you recommend they reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's definitely the best spot. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well, but not as much.
Okay.
Yep, LinkedIn, or I can also share an email with you if you want to put that up in the notes as well.
Okay. I'll make, I'll get that from you and we'll put it in the show notes, make sure it's linked there. Darryl, thank you so much for sharing. I know I learned a ton about mold making. I'm glad ProShop's helping you do that a little more effectively and supporting the business. And just appreciate you being on today and doing what you're doing to support the industry.
Yeah. And thanks for having me, Paul. And, I apologize that, I'm getting a little sloppy in my ProShop knowledge after being away from it for 6 months.
No worries whatsoever. Still glad it's there working behind the scenes and making things go better. So, all right, Darryl. We'll see you around LinkedIn, and thanks so much for your time today.
Yep.